But how do we reconcile this dilemma? Because even the global trend you've mentioned, I'm aware that someone like the governor of California, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, spent 20 years in U.S. as a migrant, and is entitled to be a governor. But there are some certain restrictions. For instance, he can't aspire to be the president of U.S. because one of the conditions is that you have to be a citizen by birth of United States of America. So these are restrictions. Now we find, coming back to the local scene now, we find a lot of people who have made mass exodus to countries, especially in the West. At this point, you find a situation where a lot of them feel, maybe in this search of greener pasture, they feel they are ahead of their fellow Nigerians back home. On getting there, they make so much progress. But at crucial points, they are made to realize that you are not part of us. And now, what is happening from the diaspora report now, from the Committee of on Diaspora, is that Nigerians in diaspora are finding a way to retrace their roots because of this lack of sense of belonging. So, how do we reconcile this crucial role indigenship plays in our present world?
Well, I think that's a different level of problem. Even in Europe and everywhere where you have people of other nationalities, each time their economy goes into trouble, there are xenophobic expressions against foreigners and so on, and therefore there are barriers to how far people can go. But that's a different set of problem. Here in this country, what we have is completely at variance with global trends. And it's also at variance with the historical trends of this country, and that if we are not careful, we may not even have a nation, a nation, because you need to have a nation first before you think of other, issues. So I think the critical question facing us is, how do you preserve the whole idea of a nation? And that takes me to the specifics that you need to do in the Constitution. If you look at the Nigerian Constitution, there are clear sections about non-discrimination. Tells you that you can't be discriminated against on account of sex, on account of religion, which is very nice, And then we should then go beyond that general provisions about non-discrimination to insert a clause, that establishes residency as basis for accessing rights.
Sir,
I think we need to do this.
Still on the global trend, right? The Constitution review, trying to reconcile both.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Let me cite an example. Here in Africa, Faye Chung from Zimbabwe, she belonged to the Liberation Party at the time, at the independence. She was commissioner. She was minister for high education at the time, and she was not from Zimbabwe. She's not an indigene, primarily of Zimbabwe. All right, and she became a minister and she did well. Now, can we place citizenship? Can we say that indigenship, I beg your pardon, and citizenship is playing down on competency? Now, if somebody is competent enough to carry out a job, irrespective of where they're from, shouldn't that be the reason why they are doing the job? Now, for example, the people in government are not necessarily representing the people. We have had families and fathers who have neglected their children. It didn't say because I had those children, I've decided to take care of them. It's still a choice. Can we play more on competency and try to look at that section 147 as subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution and remove, somebody even at the conference yesterday, an elder statesman said that we should remove it totally from the Constitution.
That is my point.
Because there are some white people who migrated to this country a long time ago. And they had children here. They've had like 4 generations here. They can speak Yoruba fluently. Some of them can speak Igbo fluently. And they have investment in this country. And then after a while, they have so much investment that, to a certain point, they have a right to do, to be elected into government. Well, that's the extreme side of it. But then this portion does not even allow them to do any of those.
I think we must get to the root of it. It's simply elite politics. It is not, something that you can actually generalize. It is often the elites who want to capture a particular space that invoke this difference in order to exclude those they think are undermining or threatening their position. And so we must understand that it is about opportunistic manipulation of differences, which is actually the stock in trade of the elites in this country. So we therefore have to explain the problem in terms of the dynamics of elite politics. It is really not... Look, talk to people, even in Jos, where people are fighting. A lot of people at informal level have relationship across ethnic and religious divides. In terms of practical realities of daily life, ethnicity and religion are not important factors in the relationship of people. It is at the level of the public space where the elites invoke it in order to have access to certain opportunities and privileges that you run into major problem.
But wouldn't that be
eroding... This is something that we need to make very clear.
Wouldn't that be eroding the very cultural foundation of our society, which is very peculiar, especially in this part of Africa?
Okay. You see, let me say something about indigenship and settler distinction. It is true that in Africa, for you to be taken as son or daughter of the soil, you must belong to a community that has access to land or a particular territorial space. So if you read the history of countries in East Africa, the question of settler and native is a major issue, whether it is in Rwanda, whether it's in the Congo, and so on. But it is also true that Africans have flexible patterns of relationship. They are very receptive of others. And there's a very rich history of integration in this country, where people mix, across ethnic and cultural divide without tension. Okay? So if you look at African history, you must see that flexibility and tolerance, which in fact is something that we have more than any other part of the world. So we must go back to that as the basis for promoting national unity. I'm not saying that if, for example, you are a migrant in this place, you shouldn't aspire to traditional offices. That is very clear. But in terms of civic rights, I think people should enjoy them. And I think the example of the US you gave is quite exciting. In fact, for Hillary Clinton to get into the Senate, all that was required was to stay for 1 year in New York, because the US, they have what we call a civic system of citizenship. But where you have ethnic citizenship, you just need to deliberately work again, and to really do something about it. And let me share some very good example with you. The governor of Niger recently decided to say, look, all Nigerians living in Niger State, as far as I'm concerned, they deserve to be protected by the government of Niger. And what he has done is to pay WAEC and NECO fees for all children, regardless of their ethnic and religious backgrounds. And his argument is that, look, if people can come from Cameroon, if people can come from Niger, because they have certain names and they can be regarded, as members of the community without discrimination, I will not allow a Nigerian from another state to suffer discrimination in Niger. Of course, there was opposition to that. I mean, some party elders from PDP came and said, look, why are you doing this? And the man said, no, I'll do it. As long as people live here, pay tax to Niger state government, they are entitled to these rights. And I think this is the right way to go.